more on all of that just ahead. Meanwhile, the former president today launched a grenade into the battle for control of the Republican Party. Ever since he lost, Trump, of course, has been pushing the big lie that he won. This morning, he took that to a new level with this statement, quote, "The fraudulent presidential election of 2020 will be, from this day forth, known as the big lie." See what he did there? Liz Cheney, a Republican who is a member of the leadership in the House and who is a favorite target of Trump, posted this shortly after Trump said that. Quote, "The 2020 presidential election was not stolen. Anyone who claims it was is spreading the big lie, turning their back on the rule of law and poisoning our democratic system." Hours later, Trump attacked Cheney in another statement, calling her a, quote, "big shot warmonger," and claiming, quote, "she'll never run in a Wyoming election again." Cheney voted to impeach Trump, you'll recall, after the January 6th riot and beat back an effort to take away her House leadership post. That has not stopped her from criticizing Trump, and NBC News has indeed confirmed a report of comments she made today during a conference held in Sea Island, Georgia. Quote, "We can't embrace the notion the election is stolen. It's a poison in the bloodstream of our democracy. We can't whitewash what happened on January 6th or perpetuate Trump's big lie. It's a threat to democracy. What he did on January 6th is a line that cannot be crossed." Well, tonight, Axios reporting House Republicans are moving closer to ousting Cheney from leadership. She's in the number 3 position currently, replacing her with another woman from the House ranks. The Washington Post writes that those Republicans who won't spread the false claim of a stolen election find themselves increasingly out in the cold. Ashley Parker, who's standing by to join us in just a moment, is co-author of a piece that points out, quote, 6 months after Trump lost to Biden, rejection of the 2020 election results, dubbed the big lie by many Democrats, has increasingly become an unofficial litmus test for acceptance in the Republican Party. Just this weekend, Senator Mitt Romney, who voted to convict Trump of inciting an insurrection, Mitt Romney, who was the Republican nominee less than a decade ago, got this reception back home at the Utah Republican Party convention.
You might call me an old-fashioned Republican. I am. Been in our party. Oh yeah, you can boo all you like, but I've been a Republican all my life. Now you know me as a person who says what he thinks, and I don't hide the fact that I wasn't a fan of our last president's character issues. And I'm also no fan.
Today, Trump praised Romney's heckler staying on brand and called the senator, quote, a stone-cold loser. While all of this was unfolding, President Biden was on the road trying to sell his infrastructure and jobs plan to voters. The president has his sights still set on getting Republican support on Congress if he can, but the party's leader in the Senate says that's looking less and less likely.
I think there's overwhelming bipartisan support for this. If you look at the polling data, Republican voters overwhelmingly support it. Now I just got to get some of my Republican colleagues to support it.
I don't think there'll be any Republican support, none, zero, for the $4.1 trillion grab bag, which has infrastructure in it, but a whole lot of other stuff.
With that, let's bring in our leadoff guest on this Monday night, Ashley Parker, Pulitzer Prize-winning White House bureau chief for The Washington Post, A.B. Stoddard, veteran Washington journalist, associate editor and columnist for Real Clear Politics, and Professor Melissa Murray of NYU Law School. She was a law clerk for Justice Sonia Sotomayor on the federal bench prior to her nomination to the Supreme Court. Good evening and welcome to you all. Ashley, I'd like to begin with you, and your Sunday piece specifically just contains some remarkable reporting, and this remarkable quote contained therein. Deborah L., a Republican organizer in Michigan and fervent supporter of former President Donald Trump, says she has good reason to believe the 2020 presidential election was stolen. I think I speak for many people in that Trump has never actually been wrong. And so we've learned to trust when he says something that he's not just going to spew something out there that's wrong and not verified. Ashley, that goes a long way toward explaining the new CNN poll. 70% of Republicans surveyed believe the election was stolen. It goes a long way of explaining how deep the belief runs.
That's exactly right. And one of the things we set to document in this weekend story was that this isn't just a question and it's sort of a field deep test that's roiling Republican lawmakers in Washington, who the truth is generally know better. And when they refuse to accept the election result, that's more an indication of their unwillingness to take on former President Trump. And they kind of like to avoid the question. But when you go out across the country and you look down at lower levels of the Republican Party, so, state party chairmen, state party executive directors, grassroots activists like Deborah L., who I interviewed, a lot of them really do believe what Donald Trump has falsely and baselessly been claiming and what he is now today trying to rebrand as his own big lie and take that back from Democrats. And so if you are someone who truly believes everything that Donald Trump says and truly believes what is a lie, is not factually correct, that the election is stolen, then some of that, then you can understand at least where that behavior comes from, trying to cast out people in the Republican Party who do accept the election results. And it is really roiling the party and is going to prove, or could prove at least, quite decisive, not just in how the primaries work and if it moves the party further to the fringe, but then a potential backlash and downside for Republicans in a general election where a lot of the voters you need to win in a general election to win statewide, moderate voters, independents, suburban women, don't like this, don't like the big lie, and will likely punish the party who is continuing to perpetuate it.
A great point. Before we get to matters of the law, to AB, let's talk about Congresswoman Cheney, and let's do that by first airing this. This is a snippet from a spot put together by the Republican Accountability Project.
Nothing is going to stop Liz Cheney from telling the truth.
That we will not forget what happened on January 6th.
The truth about the election results.
The election wasn't stolen.
The truth about the January 6th attack on the Capitol.
President Trump claimed for months that the election was stolen and then apparently set about to do everything he could to steal it himself.
But snowflake Republicans in Congress can't handle the truth.
You can't handle the truth.
Because it exposes their lies to the American people.
President Trump won this election. The vote was polluted by illegal ballots.
This election stolen, the evidence is overwhelming.
Republican, Democrat, or Independent. If you stand for the truth, stand with Liz.
So, AB, that's some damning stuff, not even counting the cameo by Jack Nicholson. There is reporting out there that this attempt to strip Congresswoman Cheney of her number 3 leadership role again is a straight-up hit job by Kevin McCarthy, who's trying to protect his friendship and relationship with Donald Trump and his ability to visit Mar-a-Lago. What say you on the subject?
Right. I thought it was interesting today that former Congressman Carlos Curbelo of Florida said to Casey Hunt that there are Republicans in the House conference who supported her last time and will again, and urge her in private to continue to speak the truth. And so, she has this good standing. The problem is the last challenge by Matt Gaetz and others to Liz Cheney, she did enjoy the support of Kevin McCarthy, and she doesn't now. And he's too happy to make that clear. I was surprised to learn that it had gotten this bad. And in talking to a few Republicans, I learned that it is going to be the end of her leadership role if she can't convince enough people to again in secret ballot back her. One who endorsed her, who voted for her last time and will again, said, look, she's in essence, we know from that New York Times piece by Robert Draper, she's basically saying, bring it. She's taking every opportunity to tell the truth. She smacked down what Trump said this morning an hour later on Twitter, and she's really not shy about speaking about this. And so the people that supported her last time, and like this member who will support her again, still think she needs to stop taking every opportunity to be on a separate page from the conference. It's a leadership position. Everyone's supposed to be singing from the same page. Kevin McCarthy is now no longer supportive of her. And the one phrase I thought was so interesting was, she's chosen to put herself in the crosshairs and dare her opponents to shoot, and sooner or later somebody will. So whether or not she can get to that overwhelming number, we know that's not true. If she manages with these secret normal Republicans who know the truth and want her to hold on to actually survive another secret ballot for her position, maybe it's a possibility, but it's increasingly looking as if it's not.
Other way of saying she persisted, I guess. Hey, Professor Murray, let's talk about this meaningless recount of the already recounted votes in Maricopa County out in Arizona. And on the legal front, tell our audience, please, about the danger of this kind of thing multiplying, about the danger of local movements to perhaps have parties and not counties supervise the count.
Yeah, it's a very disturbing trend, Brian, and one that's worth watching. Again, this all stems from the big lie that Ashley talked about in her reporting. And I think one of the things that we're seeing here is sort of part of a bigger legislative move. We've seen around the country that these Republican-controlled legislatures are passing more and more restrictive voting laws. This is part of it. Part of the voting restrictions are not just limiting 24-hour voting or drive-through voting, but also imposing the requirement of partisan poll watchers at the poll. And some have argued that this could be both a deterrent and even a possible intimidation factor for minority voters. So that too is concerning. But I think at bottom, what all of this underscores, and this is sort of a slant on something that Ashley just said, is that in some of these states, the districts are drawn in such a way that for many cases, many candidates will have their most significant challenge in the primary, a partisan primary. And that means that the base of the party really does have the opportunity to dictate legislative activity once the candidate has been installed as the actual representative or congressperson in that case. And so I think we're seeing a real push from the base to dictate some of these policies. And it really is, again, animated from this big lie.
Ashley, think of what it is we're talking about here. Let's call it a battle in the Republican Party and nothing approaching a full-on civil war, because we haven't seen the other side kind of coalesce. What, if any, effect does any of this have on the agenda of the sitting president?
Well, one thing President Biden has been quite good at starting in the campaign is not to elevate Donald Trump when he was president, now that he's a former president, any of these baseless conspiracy theories, not responding to tweets. And he has been successful in doing that. But one challenge for him is when you have a portion of the country who, if you believe President Trump, former President Trump's big lie, believes that President Biden is not really the president, is there illegitimately, that, right? That makes even, we mentioned earlier in your program, or we showed that clip of Biden redefining bipartisanship and saying it's winning over voters out in the country. Well, it's a lot more difficult, or a bit more of a leap, to win over a voter who doesn't believe you deserve to be president because they believe a false and baseless lie that you somehow stole the election. So does it affect his agenda day to day? Not really. His team is pretty good at blocking out the noise, but on a cosmic, existential level, it's something in the water that is definitely problematic for him.
AB, the caucus of Cheney, Romney, and Kinzinger could fit comfortably in a Volkswagen for their caucus meeting. So let's just establish these are modest beginnings. Is there the time or the appetite for a wing to develop of Republicans that is not based on fealty to the big lie?
I just think, Brian, looking at the last few days, the results in Texas 6, the special election there, where Adam Kinzinger's backed candidate Michael Woods did terribly, and Trumpkin candidates rose to the top for the top two candidates in that ranked choice election. You look at what happened to Mitt Romney. I mean, people no longer, even if they don't agree with him, find that they can respectfully vote against him at the party conference without booing him. A former governor, a sitting senator, and the former party's nominee. You look at what's going on with Liz Cheney, who is not picking a fight over policy, which many people did, or several people did the last few years with Donald Trump, and they were eviscerated for it, whether it's free trade or entitlement reform or deficit spending or eminent domain. She's actually acknowledging reality, and she's going to lose her position and ultimately probably her congressional seat because of it. And you're right, who else who voted against Donald Trump, who voted to impeach him, is speaking out? Only Congressman Kinzinger in the House. So the other 8 have been encouraged to stay quiet and try to keep getting enough campaign dollars to hold their seats. There is no new GOP. There is no hope for that. And the writing's on the wall. Liz Cheney is literally willing to go down for her principles. She knows there is no political path in this party for her.
Wow. Counselor, I'd like to give you the last word. You know the expression, you can't fight City Hall. What about a state house? These measures that are straight up voter suppression that are being signed into law by governors, what legal recourse do people outside of these states possibly have?
Well, right now, the Supreme Court has a case before it that may be really determinative in whether these laws can be challenged going forward. This is a case out of Arizona. It challenges 2 particular Arizona laws, one that prohibits ballot harvesting and another that deals with mail-in ballots. But again, if the court decides that these measures can be limited and the legal recourse that individuals have for challenging these measures, they will be obviously have implications for other kinds of voting laws and voter suppression laws going forward. So I think we have to wait and see until the end of this term, but certainly what the court does in these 2 combined cases out of Arizona will be a strong signal about whether or not these laws can be successfully challenged going forward.
Great thanks to our first 3 guests of the new week, Ashley Parker, A.B. Stoddard, and Professor Melissa Murray. We greatly appreciate your contributions tonight and always. Coming up for us, hear us out here.